January is National Stalking Awareness Month, and tonight a Jacksonville Beach woman is now ready to tell her story 2 years after her stalker's conviction was overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court.
The justices ruled his First Amendment rights were violated, and the messages he sent to her were protected speech. Our Riley Phillips joins us live in the studio now after sitting down with Coles Whalen. Riley, she left behind a blossoming music career because of all this that happened.
Yes, Coles Whalen was an emerging singer and songwriter based in Colorado, but all of that changed when a man who we are not naming since he is no longer convicted in this case began sending her thousands of messages. Those messages, though, would end up being picked apart by the U.S. Supreme Court.
This next song is a love song. It's called Romeo and Juliet.
I would go on stage and think, is this the night that he steps off the screen and into this crowd?
I promised you everything.
Coles Whalen was living out her dream on stage.
I think I loved connecting with people through music.
Touring across the country with some of the biggest names.
Thank you.
I went on tour with Pat Benatar, which was amazing. I got to open for Joan Jett, which was probably the biggest crowd I played for, and many country artists. It was a really cool time.
Whalen was in the process of growing her career and turned to social media to connect with more fans.
Growing my career, it was 2010. Facebook was the social platform. I was posting everything from life on the road to backstage all the way up until the show. The industry advice at that time was to let people in, and it worked.
But one day in 2010, she began receiving Facebook messages from a man she did not know.
He was claiming to be a promoter in Denver, Colorado, which is where I lived. He was putting on a disaster relief benefit show and he wanted me to headline. And before I could respond, more messages came in. It's like, call me right away, or can I call you? The messages seemed pushy and off. They were disturbing, but they didn't seem scary at that time. So I just ignored it and I hoped it would go away.
The man did go away for a few years, but Whalen says out of nowhere, he started messaging her again.
He's talking about things from 2 or 3 years ago. And at that point, I realized he never went anywhere. He's been watching me this whole time. He was talking about places I'd been, people I'd been with, how I looked on a particular day.
Between 2014 and 2016, Whalen says the man sent her thousands of messages. She never responded and would even block him, but he would contact her through new profiles.
Many of the messages near the end were implied that he was following me, that he was seeing me in person without me knowing it, and that he wanted to see me dead. I was becoming increasingly terrified that he would show up to hurt me, or worse.
I promised you everything.
Whalen decided to get law enforcement involved. They arrested the man in 2016 and went to trial the following year.
Spending a day and a half on the witness stand, having to talk about the intimate details of my life in front of this man was probably one of the most traumatic parts of this whole experience for me. He did not testify. He didn't have to take the stand at all.
A jury ultimately found the man guilty of stalking and he was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. Whalen, though, struggled to get back to her normal life.
I tried to keep performing, but I found that I was having a really hard time being in places where I couldn't see the faces that were around me, like on a stage with bright lights in my face. I was having a lot of panic attacks and very intense anxiety, and it was becoming really unenjoyable for me.
Whalen made the difficult decision to step away from performing and moved across the country for a change of scenery. It was in Jacksonville Beach where she found refuge, but her wounds would be reopened when she learned her case was going to be heard by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Just total disbelief. I could not believe, one, that there was any question that this conviction could stand, and two, that a chapter in my life that I had worked so hard to heal from was being reopened again.
In April 2023, Colorado's Attorney General Phil Weiser argued Whalen's case before the justices.
One of the challenges we had is to make clear what a dangerous crime stalking is. The court was thinking about this from the First Amendment perspective of the stalker, suggesting that stalkers need to be protected and need to ensure that their speech is not chilled.
What unfolded during oral arguments was surprising to both Whalen and Weiser. The justices read some of the messages she received by her stalker aloud and laughed.
It says staying in cyber life is going to kill you. I can't promise I haven't said that. Come out for coffee. You have my number.
I just could not believe that they were being so flippant about this issue that affects so many women and men.
The U.S. Supreme Court overturned the conviction in Whalen's case that June, ruling the messages from the stalker were protected under the First Amendment.
What it means in practice is law enforcement has a more challenging task at hand to build the record that a stalker is engaging in conduct that we can prove they had a reckless state of mind, which means they're put on notice that what they're doing is wrong and they keep doing it.
Whalen was devastated. Her stalker now walking free.
I was very sad because I knew that it wasn't just about me. I knew that victims across the United States would see their convictions overturned as well as a result of this.
It's been 2 years since that Supreme Court ruling, and Whalen is finding her voice again. Turning her pain into lyrics and using it to help her get back up on stage. She now hopes her story will remind other victims of their own strength.
If we all, friends and neighbors, knew more about stalking and knew when it was happening because people were talking more about it, lawmakers may be forced to pay attention, and we might get some laws that actually make it easier for victims to get legal protection and that hold our offenders accountable throughout the years.
Now, Whalen had a choice of whether she wanted to retry her case in Colorado under the new Supreme Court standards. She recently decided she was not going to do that and instead focus on her advocacy work. So how does this Supreme Court ruling impact stalking cases moving forward, and what resources are available to victims here on the First Coast? I'll have that story coming up tomorrow on First Coast News. Heather.